Hello, and welcome back to Malone Hatley's podcast, The Business Blueprint. This is season 2, and we're excited to get started. Our guest for the episode is Erin Jackson. Erin, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll get started with the questions that we have.
Okay. Well, my name's Erin Jackson. I'm a financial advisor that's born and raised in Virginia Beach and hoping to really get everyone's attention on their finances so everyone can have that financial freedom that everyone deserves.
Nice. So what inspired you to become a financial advisor?
I think, like most people, I learned money lessons through trial and error. So I saw how financial stress can spill onto relationships, health, well, really everything. So I wanted to be the person that helped avoid that for people. When I found financial growth partners, it really just clicked. They weren't about pushing products, they were about building education and trust. And to me, it felt more human than most um, I guess, firms.
Sure. We always either hear or read about financial security. How do you define financial security?
I don't define it as a dollar amount. I think it's waking up and not having that pit in your stomach, worrying about money. It's something that you just have in the back of your mind, knowing that if I have a job loss, if I have a medical issue, I'm still going to be okay.
And how does either you and or your firm help clients get to that point to where they can actually say that we have financial security?
My role is really just helping build that education and confidence around it. And we protection first planning. So we secure income and family first, and then we layer growth on top of that.
Nice. And I know you're probably inundated with clients, and especially as we kind of get into certain points in the year. Uh, how do you onboard your clients? Because we've talked about it last season how important onboarding is. Maybe can you share some of your successes on what's worked? And we always like to learn from one another, maybe what didn't work as far as what your onboarding process is.
Typically, my onboarding process is detective work both on my side and their side. So I'm asking for documents, asking for them to look at their, finances. And from there, you can really tell if someone's ready or not. And not everyone's going to be ready, and that's okay. But having them kind of unearth what they have is really step one. And then step two is building education and options and really looking at what gaps they may have as well.
How do you balance goal setting with the risk tolerance, especially when you take into consideration the market uncertainties, which there are several?
Several. We like to separate dreams from foundations because you really can't build skyscrapers on sand. So that's where our protection first comes in. We make sure your income and protection are solid. And then after that, we go for growth and, of course, keeping the client's comfort level and dreams in mind.
We hear about AI and all these different apps and maybe different platforms, and of course, everyone's in our ear giving advice. What separates your role, and how important is someone in your role to be able to provide that financial security outside of all this other kind of, we'll say, noise that's out there?
There is a lot out there. And I'm not immune to it either. Like it's all in my algorithm as well. But I would say what separates us from maybe like a robo advisor or just an app is empathy. We're able to, cheer you on when you hit a milestone or, you know, loss happens. So someone being there and being able to hold your hand and walk you through the next steps in those cases, I think is what really sets us apart. We
For sure.
have the tech that we need to, build and show different calculators, but the relationship, the coaching, the accountability, I think that's the human part that really no app can replace.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I'm sure your clients range in the spectrum from early 20s to probably nearing retirement age. Can you walk us through kind of how your strategy differs when you have someone that's maybe just beginning and we'll call in the early 20s to maybe someone's more on the sunset side towards retirement?
Yeah. So for 20s and 30s, I'd say it's all about building habits. So automate your savings, protecting income, really starting that compounding early. And for pre-retirees, it's all about distribution strategies. So how do we make your money pay you for the rest of your life? Of course, while, keeping taxes and risks in check. So different stages, but I think the ultimate goal is the same. It's just financial freedom.
And what if someone how do you handle, I guess, a situation where you have a young person, they come in and they just have no idea what to do? Like, what is that first step that you suggest?
The first step that we normally suggest, say for a young person, is start somewhere, and usually that's savings and paying yourself first. So paying yourself like a bill, treating yourself like a bill, knowing even if it's just starting off at like a low number that you can pay yourself, um, figuring that out and then just making it automatic. So that way it's not something you have to really think about.
Sure. And, as we're talking, there's just global uncertainties and, that probably unfortunately isn't going to ever stop. How do you get your clients back on track when they're dealing with such uncertainties, whether it's global or even local or interest rates? I mean, you name it, right? There's always going to be something out there that could probably have someone deviate from the proposed plan.
Absolutely. Life happens, and we really try to stress test everything. So preparing for, like, what if you lose a job, or what if the market drops, or what if you live to 100? We like to have a lot of plans in place and really just going back to the behavior because that's where the power is. And we build a plan because we know that plans only work when life's not perfect. It's not a plan, it's a wish list if you just expect it to work without any type of deviations or flaws.
And kind of sticking with that, if someone's on this plan and they've been following it to a T, but then they get derailed, sidetracked for whatever reason,
Mhm.
how hard is it to get them back on track, and how do you do that?
It can depend on why they derail, but I think as long as they're open to the communication and like us being able to talk through it, a lot of the times they shut up or shut down just because they're scared of how their plan will be impacted and really not aware that you can start again if like setbacks are going to happen, and the behavior is really what's important. So, um, yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
No, that's fine. I think that's real good advice. What are some of the maybe we'll narrow it down to 3 top mistakes you see working professionals make?
Oh, 3. Man,
Or
only
you can go more, but,
okay. I think a lot of times we see people think budgets are punishment instead of empowerment. So knowing
true.
your numbers, I think, is really important. Skipping income protection. So because you're your asset and your paycheck is your biggest asset, that's really important. And the third one, saving in the wrong order. So maybe maxing out your 401ks, but you're drowning in debt. You really want to create balance and intention and not just save to save, but save with a plan.
I like that. And you mentioned, budget, kind of the B word.
Yeah.
How does one go about even thinking about a budget and then creating a budget?
Well, we like to give it's a fillable worksheet that you can fill in your fixed expenses. So, what automatically comes out monthly that you know of, your variable expenses, things that can adjust, and of course, what you make per month. So, really looking at the numbers first, and then you'll know how much you should have left over at the end of the month. And a lot of the times people are surprised that the number that they should have left over is not the number that they feel like hit their bank account. So it's really that realization and how far off is that delta. And then you can be like, okay, well, what am I doing that I need to maybe cut back on, or where's my money really going? And then you can start the whole planning of where do I want it to go.
When someone comes to you and they've been a client, but they have a major life transition, whether it's a divorce or retirement, or they've been laid off or let go for whatever reason, how do you support them through that transition?
I really just try to be the calm in the chaos. Big transitions are often very emotional, and I like to translate all the financial jargon into clear options that they can have, so they can make confident, intentional choices instead of just those reactive ones that we so often do.
And for business owners or entrepreneurs, What unique planning steps should they take compared to other employees, W-2 employees, such as those?
Oh, everything. I mean, they are their business, right? So we like to focus on succession plans. So hopefully you don't expect to work forever and ever. Hopefully, as a business owner, you have a retirement plan too. So succession plans, buy sell agreements, cash flow protection, and of course, an exit strategy. But the goal is to make sure that it really runs and turns into personal wealth and legacy, not just, having to stay in the business forever.
You mentioned something that we've talked about last season that got a lot of interest and a lot of questions too, succession planning. Can you maybe just define what that is for our listeners who are tuning in again?
I like to define succession planning as just clear steps as to what's going to happen when you no longer want to be a part of the business anymore. And there's a lot of different steps that can go into it, but I think that's the main definition I've used.
And then you mentioned exit. What is the difference between succession planning and then having an exit ready?
They are similar. A lot of the times it just depends on the business, um, what the difference is. Um, I don't have the clear list in front of me. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. As we kinda look into the future, like, what are some of the trends that you see in the next 5 to 10 years or some of the big, maybe improvements in your field that you foresee coming in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think in my field, I think people are gonna live longer, which is a blessing and a planning nightmare if you're not preparing for it. I think healthcare is unfortunately gonna keep rising, which is again something you just have to plan and prepare for. And technology, I think that's something that's always gonna change how people interact with money and probably interact with advisors too.
I Going back to something that you mentioned earlier in our podcast here that it's so important. So we're talking about the someone that's young and just starting out in their 20s, and you kinda go all the way up the spectrum to retirement age. And you mentioned mandatory distributions. What should one do with those?
It really depends on what other options you have. So sometimes those RMDs are like required distributions. You have other things that you can fund with it. Sometimes you need it to, that's all you have, and you need it to kind of fund your lifestyle. So it really depends on what options and how diverse your portfolio is.
Your field is similar to my field and a lot of other fields. There's just a lot of us out there. So how should someone who's listening in and they're realizing, okay, I really need to get a financial advisor on board. What steps or how would you suggest that they evaluate a financial advisor and determine that that's the right fit for them?
I like to tell them to ask usually 3 questions. So ask them how they're paid, of course, um, what or who they maybe specialize in, and how they measure success. And with those questions, I feel like if they're talking a lot about products more than people or giving examples of maybe who and how they've helped, I would walk away. And I mean, you want a guide, not a salesperson.
I agree, and that's great advice. When you mention how they're compensated, can you maybe elaborate on that?
Yeah, sometimes it's just commission based, but there's really a few different details. Like sometimes the commissions will come directly from the client. Some cases, the company pays for those commissions instead, so the client's not impacted by it. Of course, there's planning fees, and there's different levels of planning fees. Some people do 1% of the client's income. Sometimes it's more tailored on, okay, well, how much do you actually need? Like looking at the whole picture, I really need to charge a fee to get where you need to go.
I like that, and that's, for those who are listening, hopefully you're taking notes because that's so important because you wanna make sure that that person who's controlling your money is the right fit.
Right.
As we're talking about just improving ourselves and getting to that financial security, what would be one thing, one tactic that you would recommend someone could start today that they could see, I don't know if the results immediately, but in a short period of time?
Um, Besides paying yourself first, I would say like saving, like naming your saving account. So instead of just savings, if you can name it like Italy trip 2026 or, freedom fund or something that will make you think twice before touching it. I feel like that is intentional and helpful, and it'll keep you excited about your goals.
You mentioned earlier in our podcast, and I thought it was great, why you chose to work where you currently are. What really separates and defines your firm compared to other firms, as those who are listening are thinking, okay, now I need to go interview financial advisors. So what makes your firm different?
I think we're different from not just our logo. We're like pink and blue as our colors. It's very different on our side. That alone, but really collaboration. It's not a Shark Tank. It's a team. We share knowledge, not competition, and we genuinely want everyone to win. And I think that culture is really rare. It's abundance and not ego based. So that's something I really enjoy about our firm.
I like it. And in your opinion, can you measure success beyond investment returns?
Yes, absolutely. Peace of mind, confidence, just more education about what you have versus don't, and getting rid of that fear about talking about money, I think is a measure of success.
Is there, as others are listening to this, is there like a client that maybe shouldn't get in touch with a financial advisor, or do you recommend everybody, at least at some point in their career, speak with a financial advisor?
Yes, I financial planning isn't for the wealthy, it's for the wise. So everyone deserves security and freedom, and it just starts with starting.
I agree with you. And I guess one other question: once you create this plan, can you deviate from it, or do you have to just stick to it?
Oh no, you can deviate from it. A lot of the times we have a fact finder. So we're coming up with, what you need to sustain your lifestyle that you want. And then we're talking about goals. Where do you want to be? Okay, what do we need to get there? And a lot of the times those goals change. Maybe you wanted a house at first and now you just want to, pay off a student loan, or you met someone and now you're getting married and haven't need a wedding fund. So everything is adjustable and changeable. And I mean, we know life changes and life throws curveballs. So we have you just prepared for it.
And speaking of change, how often should someone review their plan?
I like to review with my clients at least once a year, but some clients we meet with quarterly or every 6 months. It really just depends on how much attention and behavior building you're getting. I think towards the beginning of building a plan, you kind of need to get in the rhythm and build that behavior. And then, after a few years of maybe doing it, maybe it's just check ins and making sure we're still on the same page, we're still making the same amount of money. And it really just depends. But a lot of times it's more meetings at first, and then you're able to kind of do what you want yearly.
And can these be via Zoom or telephone, or do they have to be in person?
Oh, no, they don't have to be in person. I think most of our clients prefer to meet over Zoom because it's something they can do like on their lunch break, or
Mhm.
maybe just at home when, the kids are just settling down. So, and phone calls work too.
Nice. Well, I really appreciate you taking time to speak with us. If those listeners who are tuning in want to get in touch with either you or your firm, how do they do that?
They can email me at erin.jackson@yourfgp.com, or they can give me a call at 757-338-7931.
Wonderful. Thanks again for your time. And thank you for those who are tuned in and listening. Please don't forget to rate, like, and subscribe. We really do appreciate all these 5 stars that are coming through. And Aaron, have a good rest of your day. And thank you everybody for tuning in. This is Malone Hatley's podcast, The Business Blueprint.
I take care.